Greetings, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles, and welcome to Family Office Masterclass. Today, I'm going to give a masterclass preview of my long anticipated upcoming masterclass, how to implement a direct deals strategy for your family office. It's true. A family empire is built around ownership and control of private companies. If there's one lesson that I've learned over 20 years in the community and traveling the world multiple times, including recently coming back from several weeks in Central Europe and meeting with some of the most dynastic families ever, some that go back over 1,000 years, one of their tenements was exactly that: the inefficiencies and the opportunities for control in owning, and some of them going back century after century, private companies. Research recently has shown that for many family offices, they actually have more of a position, more of an allocation in a private company, often through a VC or a private equity fund, which we're going to talk about. There's definitely alternatives compared to their public equity portfolio. Private companies offer significant advantages when you own and control. I am not saying as an LP. For some of you in certain verticals, that is the right approach to take. But if you want to have true dynastic wealth and you want to engage the rising generation and you want to have control, which is probably tantamount to the most common thing that I see from incredibly successful families, trust me, they like control. So in a private company with direct ownership, you have control through entry, obviously, but direction and exit. You're igniting the engine of wealth creation within the family. And for a family to be dynastic, to break the bonds of it all fades away in 3 generations, of course, governance, taxes, there's a variety of factors. I do understand that. But if you don't ignite the engine of entrepreneurship, of understanding business and how the world works, I'm probably here to state it's just not going to work. You can't just put it all into a trust, have it all in public equities, likely with various counterparty risk. There's lots of things that could go wrong. There is the business building versus portfolio building aspect, that long-term historically in portfolio returns. And yes, a couple of 100 basis points year after year after year, tax favored, absolutely matters. You're reducing cost. That's a little debatable, depends on a variety of scenarios, and definitely having tax control. So there's inefficiencies in the private markets, especially compared to the public markets now, that are getting more and more focused on large global institutions that have a significant impact on governance of a lot of quote unquote public companies, a lot of insight, and a lot of AI and sources they have to make it a more efficient market. It makes it difficult for families effectively to really have an edge. Institutional investors, I commonly feel, they often move too slow and they're going to be more constrained. Where private equity funds, they often need to deploy capital, and inherently they answer to shorter term time horizons. Look at the tremendous advantages in a couple of minutes that I just laid out as to how owning and or having a percentage and some level of control in private companies in less efficient markets, all things even in my little preview, we'll go over to some degree. It creates opportunity that is not as sharply focused, I believe, in other more quote unquote efficient markets. I've seen it around the world, and it's just a reality. Now, I go back to my core titling, how to implement a direct deal strategy for your family office. You have been effectively fed a lie. And that lie is, oh, that's too hard. That's going to take a lot of employees, and you need to recruit top people that are going to be seven-figure salary and build teams. Now, you could do it that way. And if you have billions and billions of dollars and you're looking to compete to move the needle in private companies that are on the more significant side, then you are going to be swimming with the private equity funds. And therefore, what I described, yes, you may need more inherent onboarded talent, the ability to deploy capital, probably paying a higher EBITDA and multiple on the EBITDA. Sure, all that is going to be true, but that is rarefied air. The majority of family offices are below 1.5 and 2 billion, often below $1 billion. I'll give you an example. I actually know, and I spoke to last night, a family office that is a pure single family office. I've known them for years. The principal is a pretty well-known figure, probably 3.5 billion. So they're even bigger than the modicum of 1.5 to 2 billion that I described before. They are incredible direct investors. And how big is their team? Well, let's see. A principal, maybe a family member or two, and like a non-family executive. I am not kidding. That is it. And they're incredibly active as a direct investor and probably one of the greatest direct investors and family office executives in the US and really around the world. We'll save it more for the masterclass itself, which you do have to want to be a part of. You have to join in terms of the masterclass I'm hosting and pay. I'm giving you real good content over multiple hours, and that is something that is going to be worth it from my experiences, my knowledge, and the value of others that I bring in to this digital masterclass that are true allocators, legal representation, and really experts at breaking down a deal. So it's not all me. But back a little bit to the comment from this significant family, that's a great direct investor. Their numbers are off the charts. And yes, the rising generation is being engaged, and that's one of the important parts from my perspective of a direct investing strategy. But it's the operating company that has operators inside it, inside the verticals in the companies, or the companies in the verticals you may build out. Therefore, yeah, there are going to be employees inside the company. And I'm not saying that you don't need good HR or a chief people person, of course, although that could be outsourced, or that might even be internal in some larger scale private companies that also could be kind of onboarded and swept into the quote unquote, the holding company. The industry, mainly the private equity fund industry, but even family offices, they complicate it partially to confuse you and because they fear the potential of the competition that you bring to the table. So no. Are there going to be cases of families that have built out incredible teams? Of course. And some of them do it wonderfully. And in the top 1% of rarefied air, that may absolutely be needed. But to assume that you're just going to drop back, I'm just going to be a passive, quote unquote, LP investor, and everything is going to be fine. If you just go by the math and the numbers, no, it's not. You need to be more engaged, passive to your wealth, to the legacy that's been created with your rising generation that you think they go to the right schools, they go to the right quote unquote education, and they're just going to go off in their fields and really not know that much about how the world works, about real business, all things real business to teach them, and generation after generation, all is going to be okay. It's not. Again, if you believe that, you've been fed another lie. So there's 2.4 million businesses in the US alone for sale. And do you know that only about 7% of them sell within 1 year, within 12 months? That's incredible. And look at the demographics. Most of the businesses are owned by who? Baby boomers. They're aging out. They're looking to retire. They're looking to move on. There's never been a better time, since they're going to be most commonly, quote unquote, the owners of privately held businesses. Oh, but how about their heirs? Well, the fact that they may be having less kids, that's a different story. Uh, do you think their kids are going to be interested? They very well might be, and that's wonderful when they are. But often they have different passions, different desires. So therefore, the kids, the heirs, probably would rather have not the burden of running a business. God forbid they have to work hard and they have to develop specific skill sets that apply, quote unquote, in the real world. So they would rather liquidate, just get the cash and do whatever they want to do with it. There is a tremendous opportunity. I love venture capital for a small percentage. Venture capital is enticing. However, it's a pipe dream. It's a promise that if all goes great, what can be. What I like, what the big families that I see like in the Middle East, in LATAM, in North America, and Europe, you know what they like? Cash flowing, positive businesses. The real thing. That is not what can be, that is the what is. It's reality. In VC, you're kind of buying the idea. And again, in what I would say buying private companies, you're buying real profits that are inherent in that specific business. We are in incredibly turbulent times. Uncertainty, bloated government, regulatory issues, fiscal deficits, wars going on. The public markets, come on, they've been propped up by a couple of companies. So do you think that really is going to be the way to go long term? Of course, a percentage of your portfolio, liquidity and all that. I know that's important. But look at the opportunity now. So what did I say about baby boomers owning most businesses, retiring? A lot of businesses were not the most effective and efficient in terms of their systems, their operations, their technology. In other words, there's lots of room for improvement, especially when you get away from like the top 1%. That then you may be swimming into a different ocean where it's going to be more competition. That's probably not going to be as much, quote unquote, the blue ocean, if you read that great book, that you want. So the fact also with the challenges with the market, with turbulent times, as I noted, create uncertainty, and that creates opportunity. If you're a family office and you should dry powder, you have the opportunity to buy potentially at quote unquote favorable prices. Businesses offer tremendous opportunity. We're not going to have the time to get into certain tax advantages, but definitely, and so does real estate. And sometimes a business and real estate will go together. Think car washes, but there's a variety of different businesses where that could be the case. But there's not as much maneuverability on the terms and flexibility comparing real estate that's a little bit more straightforward. And again, not as much nuance and art as business. Do you know that 60% of sellers effectively offer financing, or they have no choice? The business may not sell. So the opportunity for more favorable terms on a variety of different ways is incredible. So what you need to be looking at, and yes, I'm enthusiastic about this. I see tremendous opportunity, and I feel that the industry, the family office industry that I love, has been told, if not an outright lie, kind of a twist of the truth. And I'm here to correct that in my masterclass with myself and my dream team, and shine a light on the reality that you could be more active in all the things that I'm talking about. And if you have children and grandchildren and you care about your legacy and you care about them, that there's only so much they can learn in a classroom, that they need to roll up their sleeves, they need to get their hands maybe literally and figuratively dirty and understand how business works, which relates to how the world works, how to deal with people, how to make decisions. These are all things that in reality that a professor that probably hasn't done any of this ever, or it's been 20 or 30 years, they're in comfort, that's book learning. That is an economist versus a real investor. You're kidding me. That's not to say that they don't provide some value, but you could probably learn a lot of what you need to learn in business in companies in what, 30 days in college? Probably not 4 years, but okay, let me tone down just a little bit. You need to be nimble, and you should be looking, especially initially, being a little more careful and conservative, and start small, it's all good, at buying somewhat recession resistant businesses. If nothing else, as a great hedge against inflation. Oh, and by the way, in buying a company that should be net positive in and of itself, turnarounds are more complicated, offer tremendous opportunity, and maybe in your holding company and family office, you bring on a turnaround specialist. We talk about that in the masterclass. So I'll also give you another thing. Too many families. You're too lethargic, and you are way too slow. Way too slow. Wake up. And I don't know, the family office executive that's a non-family member, maybe they don't have any skin in the game. Maybe there's not an opportunity for carry and bonuses where they're going to be a little extra motivated. Maybe they just don't have that in them. They're playing it safe. I've said over and over, most family offices are really not that great. When you come across one that is, I could be a 10-year-old and I'll see it. I mentioned the one that I spoke to last night. Just being in there for 5 minutes in the past, yet talking to him again last night. It's just so obvious. They're just better. Does that mean they're better people? No. Does that mean they're necessarily higher IQ? No. They're competent. They identify blind spots. They move their ego aside, and they're patient and building out a network. Now, that's another word, patience. Private equity doesn't necessarily have patient capital. A family may look at things and businesses over generations. I would state, yeah, what's going to be important, simplistically, price, sure, and terms. I'm going to argue that terms are the most important. And you better have proper legal counsel. And again, don't settle for average. You want someone who is excellent, who is incredibly competent and responsive to you. And I go back to what I said, you have to move fast. That also gets deals done. It makes sellers excited. They offer more favorable pricing and terms, but you need to do it. You need to actually move fast. 90% of family offices are broadly too slow. You could all be so much better, so much better. But that's more my practical management that I have masterclasses on, like exceptionalism in the family office, how to create a top 1% family office, and my private coaching and mentoring that I do. And that probably is really my true love in the industry. I want to be reborn as like Peter Drucker and Jim Collins and just work on practice management in the family office. But again, I know many of you are intrigued and interested and kick the tire. And again, I think you're all making direct investing out to be more complicated than the reality of that, quote unquote, that it really is. Okay, so I hinted at it, but small businesses are fertile ground for the rising generation to know how business works, which relates to how the world works and how life works. They learn about sourcing. They learn about negotiation, about financing, about running a business, about problems. I rather they learn young and they grow into their excellence. No one's born a great executive, a great builder per se. You grow into it. And there's only so much you can learn with education, although it's important. Although, again, like I stated, I don't quite get from a business perspective a lot of things that I see in universities. I think a lot of it could be accelerated and taught by a true master, someone who's actually done it, someone who's been in the trenches. And yes, at a family office level, even modest for a family office level, but maybe you do start modestly. Maybe you're looking at, companies with if it's a rising generation, you want to have source and lead, maybe even under a $1 million EBITDA. Or maybe more realistically, to move the needle a little bit, maybe 1 to 5 million. And depending on both the EBITDA and the vertical, the industry that you're looking at, There may be businesses available at even 2 or 3x that multiple. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And please don't look at discounted cash flow models and all these bright-eyed investment bankers or wannabes that are coming out of school. There is a time and a place for some of that. By the way, that could also be outsourced on like Upwork for a couple of $100. Again, don't make it more complicated. What's the profit? What's the loss? What's the cost to service debt? And what can I do to enhance profits? Ooh, maybe I could simply just raise prices. And therefore, now I went from an okay return on my capital to one a lot better with something as simple as that. So again, I go back to also terms. Terms are very, very important. And don't worry, you should be happy to be buying so-called boring businesses. They're usually going to be a little weaker in their infrastructure, their systems and processes and tech. If you're able to have a process and to have, again, a little bit of economies of scale, maybe in the family office or other businesses, and kind of cross-pollinate. And then depending on the business, you may want to bring on someone from a marketing perspective to help from the perspective of enhancing or increasing sales. Or maybe you also want to go buy a company that's a social media marketing agency or marketing agency in general. Every business wants more sales. Those kind of industries will always be popular. And yeah, they're likely going to go for a greater multiple than the 2 or 3x that I noted earlier. You know, and don't be worried about, a true entrepreneur starts their own company. Sure, they also buy companies and they turn them around, or if they don't really need a turning around, maybe they're already, again, net cash flow positive. Just make them better. Oh, I don't know. There's an entrepreneur you might have heard of, Elon Musk. Did he create Tesla? No, he purchased it from, is it Martin Eberhard and Mark Taperning, as I remember correctly? Back in 2003 and 2004? And I would say he's done pretty well with that company. So it's easier to buy profits than to build them. And I don't think it's ever been easier to learn about different industries and sectors. Even forgetting about universities and what you could learn there. In today's world, we're interconnected. We have the internet. We have social media. We have learning platforms all over the place, including many free like YouTube. Don't underestimate that. You could learn about a given vertical, whatever that may be, beer distributors, construction, manufacturing, car washes, the legendary tightening of stepping stones, laundry mats. Don't discount any of those. Now, yes, of course, diligence is very, very important. I'll let you in on a little secret. Sometimes business owners that are selling, they lie. And you can't just believe, well, let me get a copy of the 3-year tax returns and profit and loss statements from the bank. That is probably not good enough. So you may have in-house accounting and legal. That's all going to be a value. Maybe use an accrual or a security firm, both for the principals and the company itself to do a little bit of a background check. You may need to verify the banking relationship and actually verify. You may want to go into the business for a couple of days and kind of just make sure that it looks good. You want to look into insurance claims, lawsuits, a variety of different things, which we'll get into with our legal professional that will be joining us for a part of that masterclass. But everything has risk. So again, and maybe taking it a little bit to the home stretch, we make it harder than it needs to be. You need to know business basics. You need to know how to source deals, how to negotiate, how to do evaluation, financing, and quote unquote terms, very important. And with the right people around you, it's just not that hard. Again, I say the industry has kind of lied to you. Actually, sourcing has gotten a little more competitive and tricky, and that's going to be very important. Do you use your own network? Do you go to conferences and trade shows of industries that you're interested in buying businesses in? Yes. Do you leverage accountants and attorneys you know? Do you look into bankruptcy attorneys, business brokers, small iBankers, independent sponsors, empireflippers.com. There's lots of things you could do, and we talk to an expert on that as well during my masterclass. And I do like things like campgrounds, RV parks, beer distributors. Some of those will combine real estate, quote unquote, with business. I might have a family member come on that likes to do businesses like that do have underlying real estate or a lot of equipment. They're then able to do some leverage and lending against that. Like, you could get really creative with this. It's fun. It's exciting. And you could get a greater return, have way more control, less liquidity. Yeah, that's the risk. Although what, in a PE fund, well, compared to public equities, but in a PE or VC on some secondary markets, it's not like that's going to be overly liquid either. And again, effectively, you have zero control. Probably in taking it a little bit to the home stretch, you're not just an ultra high net worth investor, although really a lot of people, even at that stage or even before that, could do this. I could give you some strategies of certain industries to approach. If you're a so-called regular person and often get a lot of seller financing, you could become the mogul. You could build that empire, and you start effectively one business at a time. But the advantage, even in a so-called small family office, is you've done it. Your family has done it. You understand. You have connections, including in banking and other families and relationships. You hopefully have money, and that allows you some capability of all cash deals at a significant discount. Now, obviously, in companies and verticals, a lot of you probably don't want to be an operator. So knowing how to negotiate terms with the current owner and or members of their team, where to structure non-competes, how to do earnouts, how to leave them a sliver of equity, and how to have a variety of strategies to get them to be further engaged. In the meantime, you're there working on the infrastructure, on the systems, on perhaps raising pricing and certain marketing strategies. You could make this really, really work. And if you have internal talent on CIO, CFO, and COO already in the family office, even if they're not, listen up again, even if they're not that experienced in actively investing in private companies, this could be good for them. They could also potentially participate in a part of it and feel more engaged. They're learning something new. They're regaining their sense of passion and education and competency. This is all good. But by the way, what did I say earlier? With the family, that's the above $3 billion family that has an incredibly lean team, but it's operators. So that goes back to, you're probably going to want to form a holding company. Our legal talent coming on in the masterclass, we'll talk about that. It's relatively simple. Does have some tax complexities as you bring multiple companies into it, but creates some liability barriers between the companies and other advantages. Well worth it. So what you want to do, obviously, within the holding company, is own one or more companies, preferably in certain specific verticals, preferably some sort of synergy. And you want to develop the right operators, which may include, for a short time, a current seller selling to you, someone on the current team, or someone you could entice away or use recruiting. But you do want to have a wonderful team. But you don't need to do that with a hardcore bunch of investment bankers and direct investing team. That is a lie that you have been told. And I've been told this not just from my own eyes seeing reality, which of course is important, but simply by amazing families, including one that is a Forbes 200 family. And that's what they're telling me. They laugh when they hear some of the things they hear in the industry. You're being bamboozled, and I'm here to correct that. So what I do is I host masterclasses on a variety of different topics. This is obviously going to be one that's going to be very, very popular. They are usually done virtually. They're done on Zoom. They're convenient. In this case, we do this over, I'm saying 3 hours. It'll probably run 3.5 to 4 hours. over usually one evening, like 7 to 10, 7 to 11. And it's not just me, it's incredible faculty, dream team guests that I have on that augment me, that interact with you. And the good thing about Zoom or any live platform, even digitally, is you get to hear it in the moment and you get to interact and ask questions. You get to be immersed in it. But even if by some chance you miss a part of it or couldn't take a note every second, of course it's recorded. You get that as well. I have somewhat of a PDF that plays out over about 30, 40 pages, maybe more. You get that as well. And then within 30 days after the masterclass, you get to have your one-on-one Zoom with me. Lucky you. And hopefully we could dive a little deeper in. And basically my role as I've evolved what I do, I want to provide results and give incredible access. I know thousands of families around the world. I just had a bit of a dealing through a conduit of mine with a family that's, I mean, it's a little off the grid because the Forbes doesn't pick it all up, but probably tens of billions of dollars. Let's just say somewhere in Central Europe. Like imagine the connectivity of business interest, of co-investing, of opportunities to become more of a global citizen. It's an exciting time, but a little scary. Understand we all have blind spots and we all have a bit of an ego. Let's just face reality. Understand the blind spots, move the ego aside. It's okay that you don't know everything. I spend hours every day researching, talking, interacting, immersing myself in a single family office community, and I still have, after decade, a lot to learn. But I may know a thing or two. And for relatively a modest cost of one evening, the opportunity of, even if you walk away with one incredible idea or a new contact from among my quote unquote dream team other than me, it's well worth it for the price that I'm charging. Come on. So go to angelorobles.com, my website. One day I'll put up familyofficemasterclass.com. I do own it and the URL. I just haven't done it yet. So it's all under my brand and you'll see it. Again, angelorobles.com, and you'll figure out how easy it is to learn more. Perhaps that's where you're seeing this video now, and the opportunity to move forward in the masterclass. I host multiple. So if this one comes and goes, it's probably going to be a very popular one. I'll probably do it every month or 6 weeks. We'll see. Along with exceptionalism in the family office, creating a top 1% family offices in tech, sovereign risk and disaster preparedness, and a variety of others that I'm excited to do. I love to teach. I love to share my knowledge. I love to share a part, quote unquote, of my network and have them share their knowledge with you so you simply become better. On that note, this so-called primer, I promise these always supposed to be like 10 minutes and they end up being like 30 minutes or longer. So this is just a little primer of what you actually get at the masterclass. Join us. You won't be sorry. Look at all the testimonials that I have on my homepage, on my masterclass page, and I do have a page on my angelorobles.com called Direct Deals, which basically is focused usually more so on my masterclass or masterclasses on that subject. But there are going to be some intriguing things I'll be doing that will expand from that when I talk about results and when I talk about access. So on that note, everyone, I'm Angelo Robles of Family Office Masterclass and my own consultative practice. Follow me on social media where I'm very active. And again, go to angelorobles.com and sign up for this and or other masterclasses now. There are some that I do custom for people one-on-one, obviously at an enhanced cost. And there are some that I look to do that will be in person. For one company, they did hire and engage me to kind of work with their internal talent in person over a couple of days in their beautiful conference space. So I'm open to creative engagements, whether a family office or other